The Robinvale line is a very much forgotten line, especially by the government. It serves the grain producing region of the Mallee, and is now a goods only line in an abysmal state. In today's video, we'll be covering the Robinvale line's history/closure, rolling stock, some stations along the line, where it is today, and will services resume. History. The first stage of the Robinvale line opened from Inglewood to Coronvale on the 15th of April 1882. Coronvale would later become the junction to the Robinvale line, but the first extension was to Charlton, which would later become a part of the Corwin line. The first evidence of the Robinvale line was Coronvale to Boort a year later in 1883. Another year goes by and another extension happens, this time Boort to Katuk, and then to Ultima at the turn of the century, to Chillingola in 1905, to Mananga Tang, the current line terminus, in 1914, to Anuelo in 1921, and finally, the furthest the line has ever been built to, Robinvale, in 1924. Originally, the Robinvale line was accessed via the current-day Inglewood to Coronvale line. Trains would run down it, and then run into Bendigo, and then so on to Melbourne. When the Dunolly to Inglewood line was opened in 1888, most services would run by there instead. The entire line was built to 1600mm broad gauge and is single track all the way through, with passing loops when necessary. The line would carry mainly grain, but a passenger service was provided to serve the small communities along the line, such as Inglewood, Coronvale, Boort, Katuk, Ultima, Mananga Tang, and of course, Robinvale. A proposal to extend the line to a now non-existent town in New South Wales was nearly completed, but never finished. The extension was known as the Robinvale to Let extension, and was part of the Border Railway Act of 1922. 5 stations were planned to be built over the border into the Riverina district of New South Wales, just like most other railways at the time. The Let line's purpose was to develop a part of the Riverina district of New South Wales. Work on the rail line started in 1926, with a brand new rail and road bridge spanning the Murray at Robinvale as part of the project, which miraculously survived until 2006. Construction was paused for a few years until April of 1929, and in 1930, a special train ran as far as Kuraki. There was an effort to continue the line towards the proposed line terminus of Let, but the line further was never operational. Kuraki was the furthest the line had gone, with services being ran by the Railway Construction Company instead of Victorian Railways. These services ran until the construction, and the line was finally abandoned on the 12th of February 1943. In the 60s and 70s, the Victorian Railways were hemorrhaging money. Because of this, they decided to cut many of their mostly unused passenger services. One of these passenger services was the Robinvale Rail Motor. The last term rambled from Bendigo to Robinvale on the 3rd of June 1978, and from the 5th of June, all of Robinvale's public transport issues were solved when a Bendigo to Ultima and Swan Hill to Robinvale bus started. Rolling stock. The Robinvale line will be serviced by pretty much just the branch line engines for its entire life, the Ks, Js, and D3s. The interesting engines would have been relegated to the main lines, where the grain that the Ks, Js, and D3s brought down would be transferred onto their trains. After the invention of diesel power, the arrangement was still the same, just with different engines, mainly Ts and sometimes Bs on the Robinvale line. Currently, the line would be served by Pacific National's stock, but I'll cover that later. Some stations along the line. Coronvale. Coronvale was opened in 1882. Then it had an identity crisis and was renamed to Corong in 1883, and then back to Coronvale in 1884. At the peak of operation in 1914, a new 70-foot turntable was provided to replace the old 50-foot turntable. The station was rebuilt as an island platform with footbridge access, and a third goods platform with accompanying goods shed was also built. A marshalling yard was also built adjacent to the station. At this time, the majority of residents in Coronvale would have been railway men and women. In 1941, the dead-end road C was removed. In 1942, the work siding between the Sea Lake line and the loco siding was removed. Rationalization was carried out in the 1980s, which replaced the mechanical staff and ticketing system formerly used with electric staff between Koronvale and Bort. Today, practically no trace of Koronvale's heritage remains, with the railway station removed and platform mound remaining. A water tower and standpipe still remain at the site today, used for heritage trains. Bort was opened on the 2nd of July 1883. The station building built for the station is a wooden building, which has since been removed, and freight trains today pass the platform mound. In 1916, electric staff and ticket was carried out to Mysia, which was extended to Katuk a year later. In 1941, the ash pit siding was removed, and on the 1st of September 1942, the chief telegraph officer telegraphed Koronvale how many meals were needed for the next train. I think that's very important information. On the 31st of March 1953, the down departure home signal, turntable, and turntable siding were collectively removed. In 1965, flashing lights were provided at Jeffrey Street. Katuk. Katuk was opened on the 7th of August 1894, and the Wikipedia page was very detailed. The station built for the town was a very nice red brick and tan, with a station building I really like. Currently, it gets passed by goods trains, and all the windows are boarded up. In 1900, the station no longer had the honor to be called a terminus, and to quote Vic Sig in 1903, man in charge. In 1917, the electric staff and ticket was extended to Lambeth. In 1927, the station site got a small upgrade when a dead-end loco siding was built, as well as a 60-foot turntable. In 1955, the dead-end siding at the end of Road 3 was shortened about 250 feet. In 1979, the station master was removed and replaced with a caretaker. 5 years later, the 60-foot turntable was abolished. Mananga Tang. Mananga Tang was opened on the 28th of January 1914. The station built, which currently stands at the town, is a purely tan building with red roof, which I don't think looks as nice. It narrowly cheated death when it was heritage funded. Today it's preserved. In 1916, a 53-foot turntable was provided, and in 1921, the line was extended to Anulo. In 1924, the original building was set ablaze and burnt to a crisp. In 1969, the turntable was removed, as well as telegraphing instruments. In 2021, roads 2 and 3 were booked out of service. Today, Mananga Tang is the terminus of the line, regaining its terminus status after 87 years. Robinvale. Robinvale was opened on the 5th of June 1928, and is the furthest the line had gotten on the Victorian Railway's operation. At the time of construction, it was called Bumbang. Probably a good idea it was renamed. The station built for the town was a much smaller building than Mananga Tang. It's like if you chopped Mananga Tang in half and added a tan-colored shed on the other side. On the 11th of March 1924, the line was ready for goods trains. In 1928, a station master was provided. A siding for the Robinvale Producers Cooperative Company Limited was provided off Road 3 in 1953. And in 1979, the aforementioned station master was out of a job. And in 2008, the line was booked out of service for maintenance and never returned. Where is it today? The Robinvale line is now known as the Mananga Tang line. The section from Robinvale to Mananga Tang was closed in 2008. Technically, the line from Ultima to Robinvale was booked out of service for track and level crossing upgrades. The very same year, upgrades from Ultima to Robinvale were cut back to Mananga Tang, and the containers formerly loaded at Bort was shifted to Donald on the Mildura line, sparking the end of the Robinvale line. All traffic along the original alignment, the Bendigo to Inglewood line, was also suspended, and has since been disconnected. Now trains take a much more windy route via Dunolly, Avoca, Ararat, Cressy, and Geelong. Koronvale to Katuk was also to be upgraded, as it is a part of Victoria's core grain network, in a $22.7 million package to upgrade several other rail lines. Speed was cut back severely from Koronvale to Lambeth due to poor sleeper condition to a measly 25 km per hour, while the rest of the line was 45 km per hour. These speeds have since been lifted to a much more sensible 65 km per hour from Inglewood to Boort and 55 km an hour from Boort to Mananga Tang. The Murray Basin Rail project was a result of poor decision making two states had in the 1800s, which we still see the knock-on effects of today. The Murray Basin Rail project was basically a project to heavily upgrade the rail lines in Victoria's northwest, which the Robinvale line is a part of, although nothing so far has been done to the line as of today. The Big Build website isn't really clear on whether the line did get new sleepers, and the planned gauge conversion of the line was cancelled in 2019. The only thing noteworthy is, while the Mildura line was closed for gauge conversion, the containers which were previously loaded at Mervyn, west of Mildura, were loaded at Mananga Tang instead. Today the line is operated by a whole host of operators. Current grain services are operated by Pacific National and Southern Short-Haul Railroad. They run when required and not to schedule. Intermodal container trains run from Ultima to Victoria Dock, which is operated by Cube Logistics. At this point, the future doesn't look bright for the line. Will services resume? As mentioned several times before, grain trains run frequently, as well as general goods to Boort. The line's condition isn't the best, and even the lowest speed for passenger trains is grade 2 track, 80 km per hour, while the Mananga Tang is mostly grade 4 and 5, so not suitable for a passenger service. Most of the towns on the line don't warrant a passenger service, with population in the lower hundreds, although Mananga Tang might get a passenger service if the Swan Hill line is extended to Mildura. However, I prefer the Geelong to Ballarat to Maryborough to Mildura route instead, so pretty much no, services will not resume. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video about the Robinvale line. If you have any suggestions on what line I should do next, then leave a comment below. If not, like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.